with all due respect.
Oh, yeah, or now.
Not
We have
said in here, recording in progress yet.
it is early morning version of With All Due Respect, which by early is 8:30. So regardless of what time you're watching this, it's 8:30 here right now. I don't think we've ever done well. I think we need a check-in on things that are going on. I think we need a check-in. Mike, do you feel comfortable giving us a check-in on what you got going on? You
Yeah.
all got busy.
Yeah.
Your 1 month off of work was so awesome. I got to text you all the time.
All the time.
All these amazing answers back. I'm like, oh my God.
And immediately, like within 90 seconds.
Yeah, there's Chat GPT and Mike GPT.
Oh my gosh, we should bring that.
All of a sudden I text Mike, I didn't get one right back, and he goes, I'm packed in the ER.
I was sewing a dude's fingers back on the other day, so I was a little busy.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense, man. That makes sense. So he can type people back too.
Yeah.
And you're somebody.
It was, well, the skin of the two tips of his fingers. He literally, this is a wild story if people care, but he literally almost, they call it degloving. So like taking all of the skin off of just the tips of his fingers. I guess he caught it on like a chair, he said, when he was falling. And so he literally like went from the end of this digit, sliced all the way up around his fingernails. So when we stitched his skin back on, basically we put stitches through his fingernail to hold his skin up to his fingernail edge. It looked wild. The dude sat in the waiting room for like 5 hours with no pain meds. And then, we numbed up both of his fingers, and that's when he's kind of like, oh yeah, that hurts a little bit. But I was just like, this guy's tough as nails. 5 hours with his fingers barely hanging on, no pain meds.
I have
So
seen a lot of jujitsu memes where people wear their ring to jujitsu,
yes.
get it wrapped and caught into things, and they're like, hey, just remember, don't wear your ring in jujitsu, especially in the gi.
If you need a good investment, this is the best thing I've ever bought for your ring, and it hooks onto your water bottle. You take it off and you unscrew it, and you can put your ring inside.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because I get nervous about that too. Like I first of all don't really like wearing rings that much, but I definitely get nervous about, like, there's a girl from my high school that jumped off. She was at the lake and she had a ring on her finger, and she jumped off a rock and got stuck and she lost her finger. So I forever, I'm just like, I will not keep my ringer, my ring on. But that's from Amazon.
That's a great way to start our this podcast. So if people think it is a myth, they can get your finger cut off and deglove a finger or lose a ring, right? We've all seen those posts on social media or something like, hey, I was walking through this park and my ring was here and now it's gone off my hand, right? Well, we did nutrition myths. We thought we could do nutrition myths and fitness myths at the same day. Myths are one of those things, guys. I don't feel like they're going away. I still feel like it's 20 some years in this industry and I still get the same question. So literally what I did is I looked at the number one top, or the top 10 fitness myths people are searching for online. And we're just going to go through it again. I've actually heard very intelligent people who got their degrees in exercise science say this. Well, I have to get my cardio in because that's when we lose fat. I burn fat when we do cardio. And there is, if you're listening, there's a great thing that people say out there. Weightlifting for fat loss. Weightlifting is underestimated for fat loss, but cardiovascular is underestimated for heart health. Isn't that what they say? Like, do the cardio for heart health, the lifting for weight loss and body composition. But we still hear people say, I got to get my cardio in so I can burn fat. Right?
Yeah.
Where do you guys think that even came from? We know that's not true, but I think we should still touch on the fact that you shouldn't just completely cut cardiovascular health out of your life, right? You've heard people talk about getting lean. And, Charles Poliquin was big on this. His dudes got lean, never did cardio. Being lean and being healthy are not the same, right? Right? What are your thoughts on that, Mike? What are your thoughts on just people saying that? And can we let people know, don't just quit doing cardio, even though it's a little bit overrated for fat loss and the benefit to heart health?
Yeah. I think there's people look at cardio and weightlifting through a similar lens of like, well, the heart beats faster, so it's a similar adaptation. I don't know if you remember back in the early 2000s, I think it was Cressy wrote a book called Lift Weights Faster. Cressy, or one of those guys, and it was the idea that you don't have to do cardio, you can just do circuits, lifting circuits, and get a similar adaptation. And when you look in the literature and when you look at kind of studies on adaptations of the heart, there is a different adaptation with weightlifting and the strain that's placed on the heart versus cardiovascular exercise and the rhythmicity that the heart has to kind of maintain. And so with that, both are valuable. But I think if you're the type of person that you walk 15 or 20,000 steps a day with your job, I would not tell you that you need to do cardio, to be honest. Like, I would say that that's a significant amount of volume that you're getting in.
Even if they don't reach, even if they don't reach like their 3 through 5 zones.
Yeah, I mean, so you can make an argument for that. And so if people aren't familiar with zone training, which Gray brings up a good point here, there's basically different variables in zone training with the amount of heart rate ranges. And so when you get into certain zones, you're stimulating different adaptations. So I think you could probably make an argument for that if the person needed those higher zones, or if the person had even like, let's call them mood related disturbances. They're a high anxiety person, or maybe they struggle with just mood in general throughout the day. There is some data showing that when you do steady state exercise like cardio, it does rebalance neurotransmitters. So, there's kind of a place for it there too, I think, in certain populations. But I think in general, those sort of people are going to be accumulating a large enough amount of volume that if they really needed the higher volumes for like a sport, sure. But in general, I don't know, most people's pace of life, I would say 15, 20,000 steps is a lot. Even like, let's say somebody's working as a personal trainer and you're just on your feet all day long, and then you choose to lift. That's a significant calorie burn that I would say.
Yeah.
The
And
benefit.
I feel like you do reach 3 through 5 in your weightlifting sometimes too. There's definitely times where I'm like higher in my heart rate if I'm lifting fairly heavy, but I totally relate to that. And I always have said that weightlifting was like my job. It's my responsibility. I want to be strong. I need to be fit. But then cardio is like I can just disconnect entirely. I don't have to think about a single thing besides, whatever I'm working on in that moment.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think what it connects to are the moms who drop their kid off and then they go do a cardio class, or they say, oh, I don't really lift weights. I just think the best way for it to work for me is I do spinning.
yeah.
I do high intense cardio, or I just go to the gym and get on the step mill or have you guys seen the new thing? Have you guys seen that little mini treadmill that people have?
The walking pad?
The walking pad?
It's awesome. I have so many clients that have it just to walk and work.
They took the street and they took the road and they just put it inside your home, the walking pad.
Walking pad.
I think I think that myth kind of correlates to the mom that just says, I just smash 40 minutes on the treadmill 5 days a week.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if like where exactly fat burning came from as an idea, but I think studios and cardio classes have really promoted the idea that there's fat burning zones. Like this is a fat burning workout.
Yeah, fat burning stage. We're getting in the fat burning stage.
Right. Because it's clickbait, right? Like it makes you want to join that studio if they're constantly saying fat burning, fat burning.
Well, I think the zone training has led to that.
Right.
Right. And the zone training is like, when I first heard of zone training, it was Joel Jameson, because of 8 weeks out and working with MMA guys. He only runs off 3 zones. So when Gray one time was like talking about zone 2 and I was talking about zone 2, we realized we're talking about 2 different zone 2s. My zone 2 starts at 133 beats per minute.
Yeah.
And that's not the typical 1 through 5 zone. Like zone 3 is borderline death for Joel Jameson.
Yeah.
Zone 3 is the pukies. I'm nauseous. I've been getting, and I used to wear the Morpheus when I trained jujitsu, and I didn't realize it wasn't changing my jujitsu habit, so I just got rid of it. If there's technology I use that doesn't change my habits, I get rid of it.
Yeah.
I use it in the morning to check my HRV. Zone 3 for me was like 155 and above.
Mm-hmm.
And what me and a friend of mine realized was that 155 and above happens in rolls that you're getting the crap beat out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But zone 2, according to him, was my 133. Man, being in 133 and above for 20 minutes straight,
Tough work.
that's work. But yes, the zone training, I think, to me has led to the I'm in the fat burning stage, and you see it still in gyms promote fat burning stage. Oh, you're burning fat here.
I think, oh, I was gonna say, I just think some of that idea came out of like as exercise science became a thing. Like when I told my grandparents that I was going to college for exercise science, they didn't know what that was as a major. But then I think like as that idea of studying exercise and adaptations came about, then we started to understand respiratory quotient, which is where kind of the calorie burning idea came from in terms of fat versus carbs. And so that may have been what kind of started this myth. And so for people not familiar, respiratory quotient is basically they put you on a treadmill and they put a mask on your face and they're measuring the ratio of oxygen inhaled to CO2 exhaled. And so when you're closer to 1, it's more carbohydrate metabolism. And then when you're closer to 0.7, it's fat-based metabolism. And so that may be kind of where some of this came about at the lower thresholds. You're just burning fat, quote unquote. But people should also realize there's a huge genetic component to that. Mike T. Nelson did an interesting study with, I think they were Manchester United soccer players, and showed that even at rest, some of those guys were still sitting at a respiratory quotient of 1, meaning totally carb-based dependent metabolism. And so that's where we kind of have this idea of, oh, if I'm at rest, I'm just fat metabolism. And then when I exercise, I'm carb metabolism, depending on how intense my exercise is. So some of that is heavily sport dependent, activity dependent, genetic dependent. So this is kind of where we always go back to the gray in all these podcasts that we're talking about kind of the middle area, not gray, but the middle area in these whole conversations.
Second one is one I thought was dead, right? We've talked about this one before. We thought it was dead. That women saying lifting weights makes you bulky.
This will never die.
It needs to. It needs to.
I agree, but it will never die.
Wait, did
It
I
will
just
never die.
say that? I just said that on a podcast.
What?
That myth needs to die with the women that say it. And 3 months ago, I had a friend of mine send me a post on Instagram. It was a post of a podcast around Pilates podcast. I sent this to Gray. I sent it to like exercise science friends of mine. We all enjoyed it. Where the owners of the Pilates place said 2 things. She quit her personal trainer because the personal trainer was make her bulky. There's no reason for me to do heavy weights and trying to get strong. It made me, and this was like a bigger girl. And I'm kind of like, that's not what's making you bulky, right? And then she goes, Pilates is to me how I'm going to tone, but I also think it's the best form of training. And they're using the reformer, the best form of training if you want to improve your sports performance. That's when I kind of like, I was like, wait, I need to read something smart right now. Like, I'm losing brain cells. I need to read something. I need to watch Jeopardy for 30 minutes straight because I just got dumber, right? And she's like, what do you think about that? And I said, and I was very nice because she did Pilates. I said, I think Pilates can fit great inside somebody's routine, right? I think there is definitely a place for that. I've done the Pilates on the reformer. It's hard, y'all.
I was gonna say, have you seen the NFL guys when they go try to do Pilates? They get smoked
because it's so outside what they do. They don't hold isometric lunge pulses for a minute.
I cannot train like that.
No, one time my quads blew up.
Yeah.
So yes,
it's hard enough for me.
But can we talk about the lifting weights thing, where it came from for women, what we're doing? Can we just discuss that to kill it?
I think some of this might have come out of like the pumping iron Schwarzenegger vibe, where everybody saw these guys go down to Gold's Gym and get absolutely huge, but nobody was really talking about steroids in that day and age. And so if you look at like women's fitness over the years, it started like you can go back and Google these videos, but it started with women like laying across different machines that would like roll on their legs to try and spot reduce fat or roll on their abdomen.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of where like women's fitness started. Women didn't like want to or maybe it wasn't about their wants. It was just women weren't doing anything for a fitness perspective. They were the housewives, and culturally that was kind of where things were at. So then as time has gone on, I feel like men have continued after going after the Arnold look, and then women have kind of seen different phenoms come into their space in terms of the Jillian Michaels and the I'm not big in the women's fitness space, but over time, if you look at in general the culture of women's fitness, it's been very much class based. It's been very much kind of community based, which is great. But at the same time, none of those classes have really emphasized heavy loading. And so if someone says, well, I think, Josh, as your example pointed out, I think Pilates is best for building my body, or for whatever the answer is, yoga, I would say that's great. Let me know how that goes for you. And then check back in a year or two. And if it turns out these people are extremely successful with it, yeah, that's phenomenal. I have yet to see a woman, though, who emphasized progressive resistance training in a well-built program that wasn't moderately to very successful in attaining the body composition that they want, provided they had, this is the flip side of this equation, provided they had the adequate hormonal underpinning present. And so that goes back to a lot of our other podcasts, that many times women are dealing with either thyroid issues or autoimmune issues, or they're high stress individuals. And so when you look at women's physiology, they are more sensitive to stress. They get larger responses from what's called the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis, that loop that basically the brain tells the adrenals to kick out stress hormones. And so given that higher sensitivity, when you start to kick on that fight or flight response, that's going to disrupt all of your muscle protein synthesis response. And so this isn't to say that women kind of have the deck stacked against them, but it is to say that if they feel like things aren't working as well, hormones are a big piece of that puzzle. Stress is a big piece of that puzzle. Adequate calories and protein is a big piece of that puzzle.
Yeah.
And so I think you can unpack all those different variables, but that's where I would start. Like, hey, if something works for somebody, that's great. I don't have any qualms against it. But at the same time, I have seen progressive resistance training work over and over and over again, provided the person knows what they're doing, they're well fueled, and they are well recovered in terms of all those other things we talked about.
Mhm.
You guys know Ben Bruno?
Yeah.
Ben Bruno, really, really awesome. I mean, the guy's been tried and true in the personal training space, just pumping out good. And he doesn't really pump out a lot of content, really. He used to,
Yeah.
but he's got a high-end clientele of very popular Hollywood people. And like Hollywood people that work in the movie space, that literally they have to be in shape to keep their jobs, right? It's part of the Hollywood scene, right?
Right.
And he would constantly and consistently post videos of women who have what people want their body to look like, right? Of them doing like heavy sets of 6 landmine presses,
Mhm.
heavy sets of 10 landmine squats, heavy sets of 10 RDLs. And he would just consistently saying, like, hey, here's this woman. Everybody, millions of people know who she is. She lifts weights hard 3 days a week. We push a sled up a hill.
Yeah.
We goblet squat heavy. We squat, we safety trap bar, we trap bar deadlift, we press heavy overhead. And he was just like, I'm just giving you guys living proofs of real life people that people know that women
Mhm.
need to lift weights. Women need to strength train. And I think one of the things that hurt it is I don't know if you guys know this, but women use drugs too. Um, Women use Anavar, women
Mhm.
use things like that. So when they see these women a lot of times on these fitness magazines, they see them and they go, well, I don't want to be like that. Well, they're on drugs
Yeah.
and they're in season where they're in shape. You go see some of these girls out of season, they're thick. They are beefy girls, big,
Mhm.
strong girls who have committed years and years in their lives to eating the calories, probably take drugs and do things to add that to their body. I've had so many women be like, oh, I just don't want to look like this. They'll send me a picture and I'm like, oh my God, you won't. I promise you.
That's like 10 years of
I
lifting.
love the NASCAR one. That's like me
Yeah.
buying you a Datsun and telling you you're going to drive a race car in a year,
Mhm.
right? So, I think that's one that's got to go. I just think it's confirmation bias. Learning to lift weights is hard.
Yeah.
Josh, I also have kind of like a personal validation for what you just said. When I was before I became a PA, people, I don't know if they know all this backstory, but I worked for a very, very large fitness company, and they had a big website. They're still present today, but I oversaw a lot of their photo shoots. We were building an exercise database, and so they would bring in professional fitness athletes basically to do all of their photo shoots, and they would use those photos on the website. And so, just to your point, Josh, of women using drugs, when I would interact with these athletes, they would always want to talk about their cycles. They would always want a diuretic before they would start the photo shoot, and they would always be extremely low calorie for that week, and they would be absolutely miserable. They would be
Mhm.
constantly looking forward to what's the next thing I'm going to eat? When can I possibly go and get a nap? When can I possibly go and get some sleep? And so you would take these photo shoots that the picture would be like, all right, 1, 2, 3, flex as hard as you can, hold it, take the picture. Then we go Photoshop it twice. Then it gets airbrushed. Then it goes up onto the website. So when
Yeah.
people are seeing all of this in real time, quote unquote, at the end result, it's like, yeah, I can tell you, having seen that person in real life, face to face, what you see show up online and what is actually present in real life. Well, real life is still different, but it's literally like you said, Josh, it's for that 1 week, and then they go back to looking like a normal human being. And when they weren't dieting, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I want to add a piece too on the nutrition part of that, because what you said earlier, Josh, I know what podcast you're talking, or what page you're talking about. I have to remind people constantly, it's not the lifting weights that's going to make you bulky, it's your nutrition that's going to make you bulky. And so I think people forget, if they're like new to lifting or if they're like adding it back into their routine, you're probably going to be hungrier when you start exercising. So you're probably eating more food. So if you've put on any muscle mass or body weight, it's from your nutrition, not from the lifting weights part.
Yeah, it's not coming. Pilates or lifting weights is not making you big. It's not.
Yeah.
It's what you're stuffing in your face that's making you big. Um, Here's one, Mike. You you can spot reduce the myth.
Love that one.
Fat loss is particular body parts do specific exercises a myth. Fat loss occurs throughout the body, and a combination of overall exercise and balanced diet is the most effective approach. Spot reduction, I think, came from people who say, I'm going to do a ton of crunches because I
Mhm.
want to get abs. And I tell people, you have abs. Every human being has abs. They're there. You wouldn't be able to stand upright, right? If you didn't have abs. And you have them. You can grow them like a muscle, right? Everybody's seen the guy that can back squat 700, and then he loses weight and his abs are thick again, right? And the spot reduction thing, I think, came around that. Um, I also hear people say, "What do I want to get abs." Well, I get it. The reason you want to get abs and the reason everybody loves abs is because they're the hardest thing to get. They're the last thing to go. And there's kind of a status thing. I read a thing that men over 40 are more likely to have $1 million in the bank than they are to have a six-pack abs.
Hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, I have a full set of abs. I would probably trade that for $1 million in the bank right now.
That's
Right?
not cool.
Not gonna lie, I'll trade it. I'll trade it. Right now, it's not cool anymore. Like I'm so past that status of like what you look like, the physical appearance thing. It's like, man, $1 million in the bank or abs. I was like, man, I'd trade with that dude right now.
Mm.
Right? I think it came from that. You can't spot reduce. You hear it all the time. Now you can spot gain, right? If I did a boatload of tricep extensions and never did curls, I'd probably have bigger triceps.
Mhm.
Do do you think drugged athletes spot reduce faster?
I think in general, they reduce faster
Okay.
overall. And so then we perceive, because the other thing too is this is just like when we talk about research, like everybody has like a biased lens. And so when you're looking at somebody's body, everybody has like one body part that they focus on. And so as that body part's changing, they're like, oh my gosh, they lose fat so fast out of their abs. Or women would be like, oh my gosh, they lose fat so fast out of their glutes or out of their legs. And so I think that might be part of it too. that we just all have our own intrinsic biases of what we think is the best looking muscle group. And so we follow that. But yeah, drugs help with everything. Um, so I think the idea of spot reduction maybe even came about medically with like liposuction, that idea of like spot reduction. And then people maybe ran with that and thought, oh, well, we can do this similarly with, if we increase blood flow to the area with just crunches or just cardio. If people are interested, there's kind of an interesting article about this on T Nation by Christian Thibodeau on spot reduction, and he proposes a few interesting hypotheses. So it at least will kind of get you thinking about things, but in general, the takeaway is it's not possible. Even when you look at like these med spas now that are out there that'll do cool sculpting is what they call it, or cryo sculpting, where you go and basically get this device strapped to your abdomen or strapped to your leg, and somehow it lyses adipose tissue and puts it in your bloodstream. And again, where is that adipose tissue going? Like, think about this logically. So if it lyses it and puts it in your bloodstream, it's going to redeposit somewhere. It has to. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's just transferred, right? We talked about that in another podcast. So that's where I think the idea of spot reduction goes way out of proportion. I think people probably genetically have certain body parts where they hold more fat. And so this is kind of the apple versus the pear shape that we talk about. Women are more of the pear shape with more around the glutes and the thighs. A lot of that goes into like the anatomical differences of childbearing. Women have wider hips, so the baby's head can pass through the birth canal. Men don't. And so men tend to be more of that apple shape with kind of more of the beer belly as people talk about it and those sort of things. And so I do think there's definitely a genetic component to, people always say, I hold my fat here. I hold my fat here. And so, you know, pick different parents. I don't know what to tell you on that front, but really the best thing that you can actually control is what's coming in, caloric intake, what's going out, expenditure, activity. And then I'll go back to it every single time we talk about any of these adaptations. What is the underlying hormonal basis for all these things? Because people will say, oh, well, I just can't lose X or Y. And that's like getting very granular, like going under the microscope and saying, well, I just want to lose this little bit of fat off my triceps. Well, that's fine. But if someone isn't giving themselves adequate rest, so if you're not sleeping with decent sleep quality, 7 to 8 hours a night, if you're not taking time for you, having a hobby, giving yourself time for your brain to shut off. And I'm not talking about social media or Netflix, like a real hobby where you go and interact with people and do stuff. And if you're not treating your body with some level of respect as an adult, AKA eating multiple times throughout the day, not skipping breakfast and just having coffee and going through Starbucks and getting a 100-calorie egg bite here and there, but doing those things that actually nourish your body, give yourself a rest, all of those things are going to turn on the adequate cellular machinery to allow you to make hormones. As we age, you will lose some of those hormones and you'll lose that production, just like we talked about on other podcasts. There is likely a role for a replacement. And as you get older, if you want that six pack, or in the case of women, if you want to lose that extra little bit of body fat and you're doing all the other things right, there's definitely a place to go to your doctor and say, hey, I want a good workup on my whole thyroid panel, which is more than just TSH, a good hormone panel, which is more than just estrogen and testosterone. So getting all the other things, and people are like, well, what is that? So as an example, full thyroid panel, TSH, free T3, free T4. That's a great starting point. Throw on some antibodies, which is TPO antibodies and thyroglobulin antibodies. Good. That's almost full thyroid panel. You can also put in reverse T3. Your doctor's probably not going to run half those things through insurance. You can get them at cost. You can go online and look up labs where you can order them. Full hormone panel. So men, you're looking at LSH, LH, FSH, free and total testosterone, total estrogens, sex hormone binding globulin, and you could even throw on things like pregnenolone, which is higher up in the cascade of all those things. And then females, FSH, LH, estrogen, progesterone, DHEAS, free and total testosterone, all these sort of things. So again, if you're going down this rabbit hole, you don't start there. So people will always say, I can't lose weight because of my hormones. Your hormones are off probably because of other things you're doing in your life. And so we kind of always circle back to this equation, but I tell people you will lose weight and get fitter and healthier when you're doing those things that create health. And so when people are looking at all these people online on social media and they're saying, oh, I just want to look like X person. Well, sometimes these people will, it's a very interesting correlation. If you look at those people who are naturally lean and they're not lifting super heavy weights and doing tons of cardio, those people in general are eating only whole foods, only single ingredient foods. And they're in general following light dark cycles. Those are kind of the two patterns I've noticed at least. And maybe a third one is they're pretty active in their lifestyle. So they have friends where they go out and do outdoor activities. Those three things in general will control a lot of the other extra inputs and give you the right outputs. Now, those things are hard to do in American society. So I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm just trying to paint a picture of like, if you want to really simplify this whole process, those are three big easy ones in terms of the spot reduction piece. You don't have to think about it, but they turn on a lot of the right things.
I think the fasting community also has added to the spot reduction. How many times have you seen, I did this 10-day fast and lost 10 pounds of belly fat? They're lying to you. That's garbage, right? I think we also need to mention real quick too, before we move on to the next one. There is research that shows excess cortisol makes you store belly fat, right? Correct? There's some research there. Is there?
I'd say it's dependent upon caloric intake. Like for example, I always go back to really, really extreme examples. Look at Holocaust survivors in the concentration camps.
Yeah, high stress.
All those people were high cortisol, but they had no intake, so there's nothing to store.
Yeah, okay. I understand. I see. I see what you're saying. The next one we're going to do is some of this is semantics when you're talking to people and they say things like, you ever hear fitness influencers and fitness people, they get mad when people use the word tone. And I'm like, stop, dude. Like, they're just trying to communicate with you what they want to have happen to their body. They're not, this dude's an accountant. He doesn't know, right? They're using the word tone because they want to have more muscle, lose fat, and see their. I said, give the dude a break, right? You just see people, oh, there's no such thing as tone. Shut up, bro. This guy just, you know what he wants. You know what he's asking, right? Shut up. You know what? Don't be a jerk. Don't, get off your pedestal. Muscle turns to fat when you stop exercising. No, your body composition just changes. Muscle stays there. It can get smaller. You got more fat. You probably don't burn enough calories. You add adipose tissue. Muscle doesn't turn to fat. You just have more fat and less muscle, right? So when people say things like, I quit working, all my muscle turned to fat, or I quit working out, we know what they're saying, right? I mean, we know what they're saying, right? Like, so I think for that to be a myth, there's
not like a magic process that happens or
doesn't turn to fat.
Muscle tissue undergoes change, like
I don't think that's even
transformative surgery.
I don't even know if people really think that. I just think they think that where there was once a
No,
muscle.
people definitely really think that.
Do they really think that?
Oh yeah, I got that not too long ago. 100%.
I think people should understand that in your body, you cannot change the end product into another end product, meaning that when your body is making cells that become an organ or a tissue, those cells initially have a lot of different options that they can go down different routes. So it could end up as a liver cell or it could end up as a muscle cell, but you can't change at the end, once that cell is fully adapted to being a fat cell, an adipocyte, you can't somehow then change that cell into a muscle cell because they're totally different cell lines. And so that would be the one takeaway that people need to understand is once you're at the end of those two different outcomes, you can't just exchange them. Like Josh said, you are essentially losing size of the actual muscle fiber and growing the amount of adipose tissue or cells that are in there, and vice versa. When you lose fat and gain muscle, it's this one's shrinking and this one's growing. So there's no conversion or swapping. It's just literally an expression of one or an expression of the other. And that does take time. It's not like you immediately will have that happen within 2 weeks because people will go for a vacation. They're like, I'm going to lose all my gains. And really, it's more neurological initially. The brain forgets how to lift things, but you don't lose the actual muscle size. Over time, you're probably looking at more 4 to 6 weeks of doing literally nothing that you start to actually lose the size change.
When do you lose strength neurologically?
Within probably 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say 10 days maybe on the short end, right? 10 days, and then you start to decondition after 2 weeks.
Especially if you're more highly trained, you'll lose it faster because you're used to being that high threshold.
Yeah, right. I want to ask a question. I'm afraid we'll go off on a tangent, and you can make this quick.
Keep it short.
Where are we with the possibilities of adding muscle fibers and adding fat tissue? Where are we on hyperplasia? Do you know?
So there was some interesting research when I was at ETSU that they were looking at intraset stretching. And I think Borge Fajarelli, he's been looking at this for a while, one of these bodybuilders from way back when. And so that was one of the ideas that they were saying when you're doing intraset stretching, hypothetically, in the sarcomere, you may or may not be increasing the number of sarcomere units. And for people listening, we're so far down the rabbit hole. This has no relevance at all to anybody.
It was killing me to ask that question.
Yeah. So that was way back in 2018. So I'm sure there's further advances, but as of right now, the only time that you get hyperplasia, as far as I know, is in actually certain disease pathology. So it's actually not very easy to do in humans. Well, aside from, I don't know that we've studied drugs that much. So I'm sure
there was some research around IGF-1 and hyperplasia for a while.
Yeah.
Here's one I want to address. Okay. And sweating means you're burning more calories. The amount of sweat does not directly correlate to calorie expenditure. Sweating is your body's way of cooling itself off. I don't know if this correlates, but in the last 5 years, we've seen people in fitness studios post who can burn the most calories and calorie burn type stuff. I burned 700 calories in this high intensity workout. I'm burning fat. I'm eating, you know what I'm saying? I think there's a correlation there, right? I sweat. Holy crap. I just burned a ton of calories. I just sweat my butt off. I think we can also take this conversation back to lifting. I don't really sweat crazy in a 45-minute lifting session. Now,
No, that's what I think too.
I'm a sweater.
It makes me think of when I first started working out and like training myself, I would do like treadmill sprints for God knows how long, and then whatever stupid booty band exercises, and I would burn like 800 calories. I'd be sweating a ton. But my body composition is much better now when I just lift and do some cardio, but I don't sweat that much.
I think counting the calories that you burn in your workouts is one of the most leading misleading metrics. Is it metrices or is it a metrics? One of the most misleading metrics is that people have looked at recently to give people a false idea of the long-term effect. And I think it goes back to people who chase the workout, right? They just chase that one workout. They don't really look at the long-term game. So they'll be like, did this class, watching the thing, said I burned 700 calories. I'm getting shredded.
It's always funny to me, like when a client first starts working to me and they're like, this is the amount of calories I burned in my workout. I'm like, I don't care. They're like, really? I'm like, no, I don't give a shit. That's like the last thing I care about.
I'm going to measure anything to start. I just tell people to measure their protein intake. But like, can you touch on that? The sweating, I burned more calories because I was sweating, and the calorie counting thing. You did a really good clip one time from your car. It must have been one of those things where like you heard something and it set you off, and you're like, guys, stop with the calorie counting in your workout. It's not that important. It's not on the level of importance.
Yeah.
You touch on that because we're going to clip this one and share it.
Yeah. So number one, a lot of your wearables are not accurate, just flat out, because a lot of them are based on formulas. So where you're inputting your height and your weight and those sort of things, but it can't always account for all the other variables. So number one, your wearables are not always accurate. Number two is, oh, if I sweat more, I'm burning more calories. Not true, because if you think of it very simplistically, if you have a very large, like let's say F-350 truck, that thing is going to burn up fuel much faster because it's a bigger engine and it will generate more heat. And so similarly, if you have a person who is a larger human being with more actual muscle and even fat mass, they will generate more heat. And so as such, the body will sweat more to try to cool the amount of excess heat that's generated. So that has nothing to do with how hard the person is working. It can have everything to do with the environment and how trained the person is. Because as you get more trained and more adapted, your cooling response improves. Just like a similar adaptation is your body's ability to secrete a compound called bicarbonate from the kidneys to actually buffer the acidic changes that take place. And that's why you can do a higher amount of volume and your muscles don't burn as much. It's because you're literally buffering the acidic hydrogen ions that are produced as you're lifting weights with the bicarbonate that's coming from the kidneys. So that's just an example of this is an adaptation. Over time, your kidneys get better at making more bicarb. Similarly, you get better at cooling your body with the same stimulus. So if you're like, well, I'm used to lifting weights, but all of a sudden now I went to the sauna and I sweat so much, different stimulus, different environment. And so, for example, Josh said, I agreed with him, but he was like, I don't really sweat much when I lift. Same. But when Gray was mentioning the treadmill sprints, it's a different input and it's a different amount of workload on the heart, which is going to be generating, that's your engine, and that's what's generating your heat somewhat. So all of those factors will come into play. Also, if someone is lower calorie and they're dieting, that's going to reduce the amount of actual heat that you'll put out because those calories they're physiologically the gas in the gas tank. So when there's less calories, you are colder. Talk to anybody who's done contest prep or long-term dieting. They're always cold. Their hands and feet are always cold. If you have a thyroid issue, you're not going to sweat as efficiently. If you have an adrenaline issue, we haven't really talked about this too much, but the whole adrenal fatigue thing, the adrenals don't fatigue. It's called adrenal insufficiency. You can't make enough of the adrenal hormones that you need for the stress response. And so those adrenals play a key role in your ability to sweat. So if somebody's like, one of the things that I always kind of ask people a question is, do you sweat when you work out? Like any type of workout ever? And if somebody says, no, I never sweat, that's kind of a red flag for me. So you should be able to sweat, but it doesn't mean you should profusely sweat all the time with any sort of input. And that doesn't mean anything about the amount of calories you're burning. You can go outside and go for a walk in Colombia in the middle of the summer, profusely sweat, and your caloric burn will be minimal.
That's exactly what I was just thinking in my head. I was like, we all live in South Carolina where it's 9,000 degrees for like 4 months of the year. We should all be skinny if we're burning that many calories in the summertime from sweating.
Yeah, we're almost there too, yo. We're like
For
6
summer?
weeks away from like, yeah. And I'm in Columbia. Y'all are in Greenville. It's supposed to
I'm
be
not ready.
tomorrow.
I hate it.
Can't wait.
Hate it.
Yeah. I tell you, I can't. My body loves heat. I told y'all, especially as I've gotten older, I can't do cold. We've talked about that, right? I don't do cold. There's
I'm
other
not
reasons.
exposed to it super often.
We talked about heart condition. And remember that one time we were like, you don't like cold, you got a heart condition? I'm like, yeah, I got a heart condition. Dang, Mike, like what it's like that time that we did that consult with that girl that talked about her runny nose, and she's like, "You ever been exposed to mold?" She's like, "Yeah, I had a job for years where I lived, and we found black mold." He's like, "Well," I'm like, "Dang, Mike connected her runny nose to black mold in like 30 seconds."
Maybe. I don't know.
Just like, no, she did end up like, I don't know if
Not
you
a
could
guarantee.
lucky, but she did. Um, we'll do a couple more. I want to address this one too. We can go a lot of places with this one. The no pain, no gain. Exercise has to be comfortable. While some discomfort can occur when starting a new exercise regime, severe pain is a sign of injury or overtraining. You said something earlier, Mike, about your adrenaline response. You know when I can tell, and I got a quick story. You know where I can tell when I'm overtrained in jujitsu? When we go to train and spar at the end of class and we grip up and I have 0 heart rate. Like someone could have grabbed me, boom, and you know, in this game, you better be ready to go or else it's going to be miserable. And when someone will grip up, now some of this is I've done it for years. I'm pretty technical, I'm pretty skilled at the skill set. So the fear isn't there anymore when I roll. Now you got a brand new white belt who grabs you. You can see it in his eyes that he's scared to death, right? Heart rate's through the roof. He does one roll, he's done. He's thrown up in the corner, he's out, right? But I can tell that when I have no spike in like excitement, when another physical human being has tried to aggressively attack you, I am in an overtrained state. Adrenaline went nowhere. They grabbed me and I was like, I don't care. Like, whatever. Like, well, oh, what do I got to do tomorrow? Like, you know what I'm saying? That's my state. And then I went to Sean, who we had on, my physical therapist. I've been having bilateral hip issues. And he's the nicest guy when he tells me things he knows, like I probably already know and don't want to hear. We went through all this functional testing, looks at my workout, looked at everything I'm doing, and he goes, "Hey man, I just think you got a wicked, wicked case of overtraining and DOMs, and your glutes and hips are sore all the time.
Mhm.
Because I don't think you have anything. You need to adjust your where you put your lower body workout." Then we looked at my lower body workout, and he's like, "You got about 30% of excess volume here you don't need." And I'm like, "Oh, it all comes back to the same thing. Overtrained." Right? It's like
Mhm.
the same thing every time. I'm just waiting for I'm looking for someone to tell me it's something different. I think that's what I'm doing, right? I'm looking for him to be like,
Looking
"Oh,
for the silver bullet.
yeah," I'm looking for that one person to be like, "No, you shouldn't do that exercise anymore, and you'll feel fine." No, you're overtrained, bro. Right? The no pain, no gain thing has come from the CrossFit, and I am some of those people. I don't bash CrossFit. I think CrossFit has done more for people than way bad for people. Right? One, we learned out you got to work out pretty hard.
Yeah.
I grew up in Olympic lifting. I love the fact that CrossFit brought Olympic lifting back to young people.
Mhm.
That now we're seeing our young people who grew up in CrossFit now competing and being successful at the international level in Olympic weightlifting. When before it was like, "Hey, there's an American that finished 12th." We're like,
Mhm.
"Yay!" Now we got these kids that were exposed to Olympic weightlifting because their parents did it when they were 8, and they love it. I love that skill being back, but we still have the culture with things that what is it, high rocks? You guys heard the high rocks thing?
High rocks, yeah.
Um, where people think that this process needs to be painful in the gym, that you need to die when you leave, that not walking for 3 days is good for you. Um, I think that came through that CrossFit community a little bit,
Yeah.
but we do need to dispel the myth that this has to be a miserable, painful process to get strong. That no pain, no gain doesn't work. You see the shirts that say live sore, right? Jiu-jitsu has it too. We have the shirts that where the guys got their fingers taped together because they're bent in half and they're like, "I train all the time, my finger," right? Cauliflower ear is one. Hey y'all, I gotta touch a cauliflower ear. It ain't cool. It ain't. It's not
Yeah.
cool at all. Because every time you roll over, your ear hits the pillow and you wake up because it felt like your nut sack is in your ear and someone flicked you in the nuts, right? And it hurts. It's it's not cool. So many people are like badge of honor, cauliflower, and it's horrible until when you get it, right? It's horrible.
I think soreness is just a marker of like success for a lot of people. Like they feel like they got a really good workout in if they're sore. And I definitely used to be one of those people. And I still, some days if I wake up from a good lift, I'm sore. I'm like, ooh, like I worked really hard.
I
Like my
feel it
body
though,
is
but I'm not a
sore.
machine.
But now, like being sore 50 to 70% of my week, I don't like to be sore anymore. I don't want to be sore. It's hard to perform well when you're sore, at least excessively. So definitely
Mike,
just
talk a little bit about like that there's a there's a hormonal cost to
totally,
that training,
totally.
right? Like you said it one time, Mike, that was big, and I've thought about it since. Dudes that have low testosterone that train that don't understand why they're getting results, they've tainted their system from stress.
Yeah.
Training. Um, they
I
wo-
overtrained yesterday and slept like shit.
yeah, of course, right?
Mhm.
They sleep horrible. They watch who's the Marine guy?
Goggins.
What's his name?
David Goggins.
Yeah, they watch a Goggins video and think they got to get up and do sprints at 4 o'clock in the morning. That dude gets on my nerves. Um, someone bought me the book. I made like a chapter into the book, and I'm like, "Pfft," right? Um, I'm not trying to find my soul on the road at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Can you talk a little bit about the no pain, no gain, the hormonal hit that you take,
Yeah.
and that like you can't redline, and this is me saying it, y'all. You can't redline this thing because you'll quit.
Yeah. I think there's probably a point where soreness is actually an indicator of poor training response, meaning that people will say, "Oh, I'm so sore, I can barely walk today." Yeah, there's a certain degree of soreness that will put you in the ER. It's called rhabdomyolysis, where you break down too much muscle too fast, and then you literally are urinating out a component of muscle called myoglobin, and that's what makes your urine dark colored or tea colored. That's like one of your tip-off signs. So This is where there's a certain bell curve of positive adaptations that we can attain. And then you go beyond that and everything starts to fall off because training is inflammatory. Training generates inflammation at the level of the muscle. And when you have chronic inflammation that you are creating yourself through willful means, not just through your immune system, that is something that can gum up all of your other hormone receptors. And so people can overtrain themselves to a point of hypogonadism, meaning that if you are training so hard all the time, not allowing adequate rest and not getting adequate nutrition, you can shut down all of the hormonal axes in your body that end up coming from the brain: hypothalamus, pituitary adrenals, hypothalamus, pituitary thyroid, hypothalamus, pituitary gonads. And so you can shut all those axes down, and all of a sudden you're super fatigued and you're cold all the time and you're not hungry and you're unmotivated, but clearly you just need more pre-workout. That's the conclusion most people come to. And so this is why pre-workout and caffeine is a slippery slope when you're taking it just before training, because you lose the ability to intrinsically sense, am I ready for this workout? Or am I just dulling my brain's perception of fatigue? Because that's all caffeine does. It doesn't give you energy. It blocks the receptors that tell you you're tired. So I think that's where people need to keep in mind that if you're training based solely on pain, you're probably going to reach a point after your initial kind of beginner stage where you're training way too hard, accumulating way too much damage. And if you're not adequately fueling yourself and allowing for adequate recovery, so you're not just a weekend warrior, but you're trying to train kind of normally throughout the week, you're going to hit that point of diminishing returns sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Turn your volume
Josh,
back on.
muted. I try to measure my effectiveness of the workout. One, I plan everything out, so I kind of have an idea. I do tend to overtrain, and that's more of a personality
That's me too.
hit, right?
Just
I think
like
most
it.
people who are highly motivated in the weight room tend to overtrain. I still think a large majority of people don't train hard enough, like general population people.
Yeah.
Of the, I think it was 4% of people actually go to the weight room 2 or 3 days a week. I think 4% of people actually go to the gym 4 days a week or something like that. There is a large population of those people that are consistently overtrained. But when you talk about the other general population, we don't train hard enough. But there is the population that does work out, that does train too hard and is overtrained. Um, I try to think about it in terms of, if my soreness can't disappear with a 10-minute assault bike slow go and a little bit of mobility work, and I don't feel better after, if that doesn't kind of fix my feeling, where blood flow doesn't fix the issue, I probably put myself in a state, I probably put myself in a deficit
Yeah.
of training that day. Also, the days I lift, guys, we've had this conversation. My caloric intake from just intuitive hunger is 600 to 700, 800 calories more than on days I don't lift.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is intuitive desire to eat, like a famished amount of 3,400 calories a day,
Yeah.
3,500 calories on lift days, because my body is kind of going like, you gotta replenish.
Yeah. That's what I told you guys, like how my Wednesdays go. So I get up at 4 and I teach for 2 hours, and then I typically do a workout. I'm like, all day, I'm like, when am I going to eat again? And I just ate.
Yeah, yeah. And Mike, there were times that you were at a ridiculous caloric intake of lifting, that you were, I mean, you tell me your calorie intake, I'm like, holy cow, how do you even get that in a day? Like, that's hard, right? And I have a friend of mine that lost 20 pounds recently, a good friend of mine. I actually knew him, again, I'll age myself. I trained him when he was like 13. So now he's like much older. He's a coach. And he lost 20 pounds. And I gave him some macro things to look at and some protein intake. And he hit me yesterday. He's like, dude, I didn't realize you could eat this much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can eat a lot, right? Last week was spring break for school. I didn't work. Crazy. It just goes to the thing, Mike, and we talk about it. A lot more sleep, a lot more rest, um, more downtime, more time playing with my kid, more suppressed nervous system time. This could be not true. Held less water, way better mobility. I would wake up in the morning with like a pump,
Mhm.
sleeping.
Mhm.
what, 10 days of not having to do a whole nother separate career and just having the rest and recovery and still training jujitsu, but still lifting, but still stress of the daily stress intake. And I don't say stress like stress. People think when they say stress, they think you're stressed. I'm just thinking of, I got to do this now. I got to do this now. I got to do this now. I'm on my feet for 5 hours. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. The effect on my body was incredible. Incredible. Like woke up in the morning, like hungry, but lean, like dry. I wasn't dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
My hormone were changed from the lack of stress. That I would wake up in the morning and I'm like, I look really lean. Like I'm moving way better. I have way less stress. I was in the, here's all that. We went outside because when I don't have school, my 8-year-old doesn't have school. And I don't know if you guys know what 8-year-olds are like all day, but they're right here when they got nothing to do. He's like right here. What are we doing? 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 Right. So I was outside in the sun an hour a day. And it's just more confirmation that like, wow, if I can find ways to de-stress during the week, I'll move better, sleep better,
Crazy.
hold less water.
So
What was the first
crazy.
one I noticed?
Mhm.
Way less inflammation.
Mhm.
I don't know, y'all. Maybe what
It's
we
like,
talk.
I feel like when clients will go to the beach and they're like, wow, I felt so great at the beach. I'm like, well, you sat in the sun for a few hours every day. You probably weren't putting much stress on your body besides if you were drinking too much. But other than that, like you had a really chill week. Of course you feel good. Of
And
course
Mike,
you're sleeping well.
you have been the preacher of that for so long. If we can find ways, um, Allison talked about being more stress resilient, doing things
Mhm.
that we are more we're never going to de-stress. We talked about that language before. I need to talk to people about managing their stress. No, we got to find ways for them to be more stress resilient.
Mhm.
Um, you've talked about that for years, from the sauna, sleep, active recovery. New research came out about kids that had their Wi-Fi turned off on their phone. Like a 91, I don't have it in front of me. I think I showed it to y'all. Like a 91% of them said they had a complete less decrease in stress response.
Was that
Yeah.
the study that I posted this week?
I think it was it you?
So they got rid of all social media for 2 weeks and they blocked internet to their phone.
Yes. The psychological effect, guys, it is no longer a debate, right? Screen time, social media, all the constant is bad for our kids. It's bad for our kids. As adults, we need to start managing that. I manage my kids' screen time.
Yeah.
It's probably bad for adults too. We shouldn't say it's not just bad for kids.
100%, but
No,
that's
it totally is.
with kids, right?
Right.
But it is 100%. I talked about it in class. We were talking about social media, and I had a girl literally raise her hand. It was the first day of class I ever had with our lecture, and we talked about some of the things. And I asked the kids, "What are things you guys want to talk about in this class?" I had 2 classes, and I said, "Name the 10 things that you guys are worried about health and wellness, and we'll talk about those things. I will go find the content to deliver things to you that are interesting to you." I think that's part of dealing with kids is find out what they're interested in. The class was almost identical on the 10 things that they saw. And one of the girl goes, social media. And I said, well, tell me why? A 16-year-old girl, very quiet, very rarely talked. She goes, I find that I feel way worse about myself the more time I spend on my phone. And that like broke my heart, y'all. It's a 16-year-old girl who goes, I feel worse about myself and how I look and what I'm doing when I'm on social media, and I hate it, but I don't stop. I still scroll. She goes, my self-esteem takes a hit every time.
It
And like
just
hit me in the heart, man. Like
yeah.
I was like, well, I don't want you to feel that way. Or 16-year-old girl, you shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
This world shouldn't do that to you.
I always think about too, because like we got Instagram, I think it was my junior year of high school. But like it wasn't anything serious. Like it wasn't what it is now. It was just like you post stupid, silly pictures. And I think about that now in a sense of like I was so unexposed to things happening outside of my community. I was only exposed to the things happening inside of my community. I couldn't imagine the pressures of like seeing other people online constantly at 16, 17, 18 years old and like having to feel like I want to look like that, or I want to be like that, or I want that life. Like I knew what I knew and I didn't know anything else outside, you know? And I think that's a big struggle for a lot of kids and adults too, is like you constantly compare yourself to everybody else and what they're doing.
Joe Rogan said we live our life through our phone, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And I have paid way more conscious time to not looking at it like in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. How many times do people wake up and they grab their phone like, oh, what's going no, I cut that out. I'm not doing
Yeah.
that, right. And that is part to me of stress that kids are seeing now. Dude, kids' stress levels now are high, high, high. Right. I read I'm very into academics now. And not necessarily like 4.0 kids, but like what are the effects of that? And I read a quote that a guy said, we've driven our kids academically to the point that the 4.0 destroy the desire for the 4.0 and the all A's. While they achieve that in the process, we've destroyed their desire to learn.
Mm-hmm.
We've sacrificed the 4.0 and the all A's, but we've destroyed their desire and their inquisitory minds to learn. That's our goal in education, should be to get kids to be excited about learning, not the 4.0. I'd rather have a 3.0 kid that's excited to go learn
Yeah.
than a 4.0 kid that like just completely is like, I don't even want to learn anymore. Those are the kids that start drinking when they go to college. Those are the kids that start doing drugs when they go to college. They get into other things when they go to college because, man, they're just looking for an outlet because mom and dad sat on top of them for all A's and 4.0s, that when they get a chance to go off, they completely go off the grid.
I can tell you in practice too, you would probably much rather have the doctor who has a 3.8 GPA with the ability to critically think and be open to different ideas over the one who's a 4.0, but he just memorized everything in the textbook and can spit it back on the test.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you interact with that individual who not only has the ability to analyze data and then come to a conclusion, but also remain open to the possibility that number one, they're wrong, or number two, that there's different ideas that they haven't yet learned that could be correct, that's going to be a much more productive conversation and interaction with anybody in any career field than just someone who's, they have a photographic memory and they can just spit back everything that they've ever read and learned.
The parents sat on top of them to part of the family expectation was all A's and a 4.0.
Mm-hmm.
And if they got to be in something, they took away all the other things. You lost all your other privileges, right? It's like a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine in jiu-jitsu, special forces, and he made a comment. He goes, man, I've never seen a guy do well in special forces that was the perfect 4.0 military boy that was ROTC and buttoned his shirt up and was perfect. He goes, most of the guys I've seen be really good in special forces were criminals growing up. They were street smart criminals.
Yeah.
Right? That just we took it and we focused it in the area that everybody applauds, as opposed to putting it in an area where it's like, well, if this guy wasn't going to do special forces, he probably would have been one hell of a criminal, right? But we went overtime. We always do. We got through 6. I hope you guys have a
Stop
great day.
yawning. I'm sorry.
I hope you guys have a great day. We got Miss. We'll be more, Mike. I know time is going to be less and less for you, but hopefully we can continue doing this. If you guys don't know, I talked to Ray yesterday. We wrote a book, y'all. Like
Wrote a book.
Mike guided it. Greg contributed to it. I contributed to it. Mike guided it. Mike's gonna edit it, not edit it, but like look through it to make sure like that's bullcrap. Basically, I need Mike to look through it and be like, Josh, you can't say that. You can't put that in the book, man. You know? And then I think we're pretty close to getting it edited. We got some people that are gonna kind of make it look pretty. But I think it's a really cool, it's like 18,000 words, y'all.
Yeah.
And 100 recipes, multiple workouts, multiple tools. I want this to be something that somebody can buy and literally start their journey and create a long-term successful journey with it, right? That's my goal, is that somebody can get it and go, I don't know what I'm doing, but this is my guide. Because we cover stress,
Everything. Yeah.
health, sleep. I really hope when you look at the sleep and the stress one, I hope it's I know those are, I feel like those are your passions. Would you say is the sleep side?
Yeah.
I did follow Matthew Walker for the long time, but he's gotten weird on me.
Yeah. Yes.
But I try to focus like not on the dude, but on the content.
Yeah.
Which in this fitness industry, man, I love it when when the fitness guys could put out great fitness content, and then all of a sudden they post something on their political views. I'm like, bro, come on, you're killing me, dude. Like this was so fun to watch, right? And like, I don't care. I don't care. I care about your content and your fitness stuff. I don't care about the ADD that changed you when you were 14 years old and why you freak out and look ridiculous every time you deadlift and squat. Like I don't need those antics. I want your content. Okay, I'm over. I'm done with that. All right. I'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye now.
Bye.
With all due respect.